Sony in one fell swoop has killed off physical discs, and no one can do anything about it. And you know who especially isn't going to do anything about it? The people who are going to keep this garbage escapade in the video game industry going are some of the people who are pretending to fight against it the hardest. Why is it that whenever these bad things happen, some of the first people to complain about it are always these YouTubers who seemingly pretend to be on the side of the average consumer, the average gamer? You know, they always tout how much they care about the longevity of the video game industry, and yet they're some of the first people who immediately turn their back and engage with the products that they seemingly despise so much. What is stopping someone like Mutahar or Actman from going on YouTube and claiming how much they hate Sony destroying physical media while simultaneously going to a launch event for a would-be PlayStation 6? Them and people like them have done it before, and there's nothing that's going to stop them from continuing it, because every time they do, they get such little backlash that it basically equates to nothing. As gamers, how do we collectively acknowledge that all these problems are awful, yet we treat people who actively engage with them as if they're victims of some awful ploy by the industry? A good portion of these YouTubers are more financially wealthy than you and I will ever be. And while their success shouldn't be looked at as a negative, the reality of the situation is that they don't suffer nearly as much from these kinds of problems as people like you and I do. Average people. And a lot of them, like Actman, like Mutahar, like Digital Foundry, have shown that they do not care. Mutahar bought one of the most DRM-infested consoles, the Nintendo Switch 2, a console that will arguably still have worse DRM than either the new PlayStation or Xbox the first 2 weeks it came out. Actman has made entire sponsored game reviews for shovelware garbage that he probably hasn't even actually played before, and only made an apology after everyone stopped caring or forgot that it even happened. And Digital Foundry continues to give valuable airtime to companies like Nvidia that are actively contributing towards why our hobby is becoming so unattainable for anyone who isn't filthy rich. So if you're someone who actually cares about this hobby, if you're actually someone who cares about video games, you really only have one option. Stop engaging with what these companies are peddling. If you're on a PlayStation or an Xbox and you have an inkling of potentially wanting to go over to PC, do it. Do it now. The parts are getting more expensive than they ever have been, and if you wait any longer, you're probably not even going to be able to buy parts without it being over $5,000. PC provides free online, no DRM games with stores like GOG, intense discounts going up to potentially 90% on some older games on vendors like Steam and Epic. And even if you can't afford to do any of that by the time that you build your computer, you can still get games through slightly less legitimate means. And while I may not necessarily condone that, it is generally much easier to do these kinds of things on PC than a would-be console unless it's jailbroken, which on something like a Nintendo Switch 2 is basically impossible to do right now. Now, if you simply can't give up gaming on console, there is still things you can do. Do not engage with any of Sony or Microsoft subscription services. No PlayStation Plus, and no Xbox Game Pass. As well as this, just flat out not engaging with any of their digital storefronts is also very recommended, because games tend to be cheaper on the used market anyway, and a lot of the consoles like the PS4 and Xbox One have such gigantic libraries that honestly, buying new games isn't really a necessity at this point. And even still, to these people on console who really don't want to move from console, even if PC parts are extremely expensive right now and you have to give your money to awful companies like Nvidia and AMD, at the very least, the amount of money that you save from the actual game and online service purchases on stores like Steam and GOG will end up evening out the price, and you'll still end up saving money than if you were still on console. And because Sony and probably Xbox are going to stop engaging with the physical games market, that actually means that the prices are probably going to get even more expensive due to them having complete control over their digital storefronts. So if they don't want to engage with the physical games market, you don't have to engage with them at all if you really don't want to. And a word to these YouTubers who are complaining about these decisions that Sony and Microsoft are making, I really only have one thing to say, which is, if you hate this so much, are you still going to engage with it? We already know that people like Digital Foundry are going online claiming that they think that these decisions are hurting the industry. They claim that it's going to make video games worse. They claim that it's going to erase any of this hobby's actual meaning. So are you going to be like Digital Foundry and engage with the PlayStation 6 anyway? If any of you people have any backbone, you will refuse to engage with any of these products that Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo peddle later on. At the very least, you can refuse to make content about it on your public YouTube channels. When will you YouTubers actually take a hit to your potential volume of content for the sake of establishing some sort of actual punishment for the actions of these companies? If Digital Foundry had any backbone, they would have declined to do any sort of technical coverage for the PlayStation 6 or any of its exclusives. But no, they openly admit that they will make content for the console, which will drive engagement to Sony inevitably. So if any of you people actually care, will you go in the direction of Digital Foundry, or will you actually do the right thing?